study session to order. Up first is the greening of Monrovia High School.
So we have with us an option, an opportunity, and I think I turned it over to Fernando.
Yes, so we have explored the different options for the front lawn at the MHS. I have brought to the play of all this Miss Claire Robinson, Joanne, landscape architect. They're from Rio de los Amigos, Nicholas, the Emerald Nicholas organization. They presented us with options. They gave us a couple of designs. I think there were 3 designs, Claire, that were options that you gave us.
Yeah, a couple
Correct.
different
As
thoughts.
to
Yeah.
how, and the objective is to, what is the best way of improving the aesthetics of our front of our high school, and also in conserving water by installing or planting drought-tolerant plants, reducing the consumption of water by taking out the regular sprinklers. We have over 600 sprinkler heads in front of the high school. Over 600
600 sprinkler heads.
Are all of them active or some of them?
The majority are active. So that's the objective, and now I'll turn the conversation to Claire, that way she can introduce a little bit more in depth what their organization does and what they have to offer.
Could you please tell me your name?
Yes, my name is Claire Robinson, and I'm the founder and managing director of the nonprofit Amigos de los Rios, and we're in Altadena. So essentially, does everyone have, we brought some materials, just some of you are familiar with our work, but we have a kind of case study book with a number of greening projects as a reference, and then our bigger vision for the area. And we are a 501c3. This is our 17th year of operation, and we've been working on bringing the 1930 Olmsted Bartholomew Plan that was done for our area to life. It called for protections of the upper watershed and a series of interconnected trails, foothill connections for the communities at the base of the mountains, really robust coastline trail, and of course, a river trail network connect the mountains to the sea. And if we had done this in 1930, we would have a lot less challenges with water quality, water resources, air quality, biodiversity, active transit. So having taught for 12 years art and architecture on the East Coast, we really wanted to mentor recent college graduates in design to actually do real-world grant projects. So after 17 years, we have outlined this emerald necklace, which is based on the one in Boston. And our original case study was essentially from Santa Fe Dam along the Rio Hondo through the Whittier Narrows area and back up, and just skirting Monrovia. The Peck Water Conservation Park, former quarry, that is now turned into more of a nature park, is one of our legacy projects. And what we're most excited about is the proactive engagement of students of all ages, from elementary, middle, college, high school, coming together to not just change a landscape in terms of, as Fernando said, water efficient irrigation and native plants reflecting our cultural heritage, but also having them be empowered to learn about environmental issues and take part in the process of transformation. So we really are not a traditional, we're not like a contractor. We are a partner. We have an Emerald Necklace Coalition of Cities, and in the one book that has a coalition of cities and school districts, in this book that has a collection of our case studies, there's the Emerald Necklace Accord that was written in 2003, and it outlines some philosophical shared vision about the importance of protecting water resources and open space and providing education in the greening sector for youth. And that we have a mosaic of cities and school districts who have participated in this process, and we'd love to, have you in the fold. So the city of Monrovia is very proactive about a lot of these stormwater issues, which is the most kind of current compliance issue for school campuses, and that's one of our specialties. So I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about, so you have a bigger picture of what we're doing, the Olmsted vision with the Singular Mountains and every student's connection to the mountains and every student's connection to the rivers, every student's connection to the coast, so that we really work on overcoming nature deficit disorder, which a lot of you are aware of as educators. Having been an educator for a long time in urban areas, we know how technology has shifted the brain structure and the way we learn. And so we're committed to really looking at what we call green infrastructure, where we're bringing together public health and environmental health and beauty and culture onto school campuses. So we have a tremendous biodiversity in our area worldwide, and a lot of inequity in terms of access that people have to parks. So our nonprofit has really been focused primarily on within what we call the big picture. Looks kind of like a tree compared to like the lima bean of Chicago or the vortex of Portland. Every metro area has its own kind of figure. Where are you in this tree as a student, and have you explored and really gone to every part of the watershed? Oh, sorry, I went the wrong way. So we've worked with First Peoples' knowledge of the medicinal, spiritual, structural, and edible uses of the plants, and we've keyed off this Olmsted Bartholomew vision, which actually called for, in 1930, they did an analysis of the population and the amount of open space available, and they were scandalized at the deficiency. Now we can imagine 80 years later, things have not gotten better. So they also called for every school to be seen as a park. And that doesn't mean total joint use open to the public, but having the same properties as something beautiful that connected the students. A lot of students have a view from Monrovia schools of the mountains, but many of them haven't actually had the opportunity to explore. So these are the components of what we call the green lasagna, to make it a little bit less geeky and more open. And we talk about convergent infrastructure planning. So as Fernando said, we had worked with him really effectively along the Singular River with Fernando, with the Mountain View School District, bringing together active transit, the opportunity to walk, improve active sports by creating a perimeter of shade around the existing fields and enhancing coaches' ability to debrief and siblings' opportunities when they're there, long hours, having habitat and biodiversity as a living laboratory on campus, and doing some water conservation measures. In the future, all drainage of a particular property must remain on the property. So finding beautiful ways to capture the water and infiltrate it and not let it into the storm drain system. And we really think that's a challenging and fun opportunity, not a punitive one.
Excuse me, Claire.
Yeah.
Your slides, do we have these, or which of all the handouts we receive right now are?
Sorry, yeah.
I like to make notes, but I'm not finding where you're at. Is it
So,
that one?
yeah, I apologize. So what I'm showing you in the PowerPoint is the projects are in this book.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, we were so excited. We've been looking forward to meeting you for so long. We wanted to share quickly a lot of work. But in this book is the case study of projects that we've worked on with students. And then in the bigger vision is just we're really interested in the 2015 shift in science teaching and the way STEAM can be integrated into a green campus. So this book is our bigger vision for the whole metropolitan area. So apologize for the too many pieces of material. And then,
And can I ask you a question?
yes, of course, yeah.
You said in projects like this, we need to keep the runoff water on the property?
Right.
And is that for conservation, or is that a mandate by?
It's the Federal Clean Water Act from 1971 that we're just a little behind on. I'm originally from Maryland, and on different states have taken the Federal Clean Water Act in a different time horizon. So all properties, over time, there's a stormwater permit that the county oversees, and schools have been in their own category, but in the future, schools will also be included as needing to be responsible. You won't be able to drain a large asphalt or parking area and carry coliform or oil or trash loaded into the storm drain. There'll be some accountability as far as the way that the drainage works. So what we've done we've looked at the Almonte City School District and the Mountain View School District and the Almonte Union School District. We've worked with Azusa School District and many school districts to help get ahead of that and really look at how to transform and be compliant with the Federal Clean Water Act in a way that enhances the academic performance and physical fitness, physical education opportunities, and even the overall mental health. I serve on the USDA Urban and Community Forestry Federal Advisory Council, so I've benefited from just a wonderful exposure to a lot of research across the country that talks about the level of anxiety students are experiencing. And there's a lot of studies that show how greening helps reduce that anxiety. Students connect better to themselves and can relax and enjoy the pedagogy. But there's also increased opportunities for recreation. If you sacredly protect the sports fields, but these interstitial areas and the edges can be greened to reduce the heat island. And I know as I'm always really concerned about vector issues with drainage. So we originally, Fernando had asked us to look at Plymouth Elementary and Santa Fe, where there are some drainage concerns, and think about that in a multi-objective way. So these are just some of the projects. Peck Water Conservation Park is the closest to us, just down Myrtle. If you won't go down Myrtle, it transforms into Peck, and then a little turn, right-hand turn, and you're in that space. So essentially, in a nutshell, we're really excited about connecting students to nature and complying with this new sheriff in town, the Clean Water Act, in a way that is not punitive, but exciting and enhances pedagogy. And working with students of all ages and their parents and service clubs in the process. So when Fernando asked us to look at this fantastic high school that you have, which is such a beautiful presence on Colorado, and we understand serves the community on the weekends, we wanted to look at how to do just what Fernando said about removing grass, because it's so high intensity water, and keeping the grass where it would be desired for play or picnic, but transforming a portion of the campus into a native plant area with some nature trails and a lot of the features that are repeated throughout our network for the Emerald Necklace. So this is what we were looking at, and what we do with our green infrastructure fellows that come from all over the country and hopefully have left our area, gone to school, and are coming back to make a contribution. We write these grants that are based on the proposition bonds that we all vote or do not vote for, related often to water, and especially focused in disadvantaged areas. And the funding that's available is to transform irrigation systems so that they're high efficiency, low water use, introduce plants that have pedagogical value but also habitat value, and create outdoor learning and discovery spaces. So that's what we were looking at. This is Joanne, my colleague from Amigos, who's a landscape architect. I think you're a landscape architect in 9 states, so California included. But this is what we were excited about, and we always work very hard to look for appropriate grants available and match the grants to the property and to the opportunity. So we have looked at a couple of grants that are currently out there. One is Prop 68, and these are just some pictures of other schools that we've worked on to green, and some of the plants that we would use and some of the resultant friends that arrive on campus incorporating these bioswales. So that's really what we wanted to share, and if we were to move forward and look for a grant, which we're in the thick of, a lot of it is dependent on the context, and Monrovia High School is within what we call a disadvantaged community as far as state Enviro screen, and that's based on poverty level and pollution burden. So that makes it, that's just a term that the state
You
uses.
gotta find another term.
I know, we do not like that term. It's not our term.
That's a little
But-
insulting, as a
I
matter
know.
of fact.
I know, it's awful. So the DAC designation that the Natural Resources Agency has, it's based on a map where they've looked at pollution burden, particulate matter, and median income. But the only positive about it is any of those areas have eligibility for more grants. So that's the only positive about that. We totally agree with you about that designation, and I'm sorry to even use the term, but that's the term that's in the grant. So the grant for Prop 68 is due soon, within the month. And we've already had some nice walks on the campus and looked at some of the opportunities and noted that it would be great to, when you walk in the campus, there's a wall with all the service clubs that are, active at the school. So it's our practice do you have we have this little passport that we've made, because we've got about 70 different schools participating. And so we would put the school in the passport. You want to pass those out? And students come, to add to their college resume or life experience. They come and learn about green infrastructure, and they do tree planting or shrub planting or care of the vegetation and community science, to index the trees and help Fernando or his peers at other schools manage them. So, in other words, we would want to incorporate the students in the process.
I have a question about grants. I have a little experience with grants, and usually there's strings that come attached, and it usually has to do with access, because it's obviously taxpayer money that's
Right.
paying for this.
Right.
What strings come attached by using the Emerald Necklace as the vehicle for funding?
Well, it depends on the grant source. Some grants, some of the actual Prop 68 grants can only be used in fully public spaces. In other words, a park, that's open all the time. So we would not be able to use those grants on the campus, because the front seems to me to be open all the time and used on the weekend and the evening. But we'd have to make sure that the program we're looking at allows for vegetation on schools, and not all of them do. So we have worked with similar grant funding for the school districts that I mentioned, especially the schools that are adjacent to the river corridor.
I'm very familiar with your work.
Yeah.
I've ridden too many hundreds of miles there. It's beautiful. And your last project at the very head of the necklace,
Uh-huh.
before it branches off up next to the three-part in Arcadia, it's right across the waterway.
Okay.
That's where it's at. It used to be, what used to be up there? Pickup park used to be on the other side.
Interesting.
It's fantastic. My only concern, this is my only concern, is that by getting grant money, we would then be mandated to do something that we may, as a district, may not want to do.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Let
you
me
do.
tell you the genesis of
Yeah.
how we got here.
Yeah.
Okay, that kind of helps. It seems like 2 years ago. When was the fire? It's going to be 3 years ago in November?
3 years ago in November.
Yeah,
Okay,
November.
so about 2 years ago, we had the people who came out to fix our school after there was a fire, and there was a lot of equipment parked on our lawn, and it killed just about everything there, okay?
Right.
So, knowing that we're gonna have water restrictions, knowing that the water restrictions are now in place, knowing that the rates for the water that we currently are having are much higher than they used to be,
Mm-hmm.
it seemed to be to our advantage to create something that was not gonna need a lot of water. In essence, be a good neighbor in the neighborhood, because when everybody else is going to a brown lawn, it's a little weird to have a government agency with a nice green lawn,
Mhm.
and oh, by the way, you're paying for it.
Right.
So we decided that we need to look at bringing some sensibility to how we did our front lawn.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it beautiful, because it's a fantastic building, and it should be framed by something pretty, But the first drawing that we saw, it looked a little bit like the Huntington.
Mhm.
That's not what we're after.
Mhm.
We have to keep it, we have to be able to maintain it. We have to be able to take care of it with the staff we currently have. That is not gonna be, a number of horticulturists that are coming in to employ. It needs to be simple, useful, and decorative.
Mhm.
Go with the useful and simple first,
Mhm.
and the decorative on the back end.
Mhm.
So, that's what we're looking for.
Right. I think that's why Fernando called us, because we have been working in that mode of limited staff for care, and integrating the students is both, meaningful for their experience, but it's also an offset. It's also a way of them participating. When students plant a shrub or a tree, they're less likely to, walk over it, or if they're helping care for it, weed around it, mulch it, and it's fun. The events we have an event every Saturday somewhere on the necklace, so from 9 in the morning to 12 in the morning, and it's physical labor, but it's also community. You're meeting kids. If you're in elementary school, you're meeting middle and high school and college kids, and it's a mix of people from the region. So it's all of our projects are based on very limited budget. I love the Huntington, I love Descanso, but we are realist in terms of reducing the water budget, complying with the Federal Clean Water Act, and having a leadership position on that, and having science teachers or local history teachers benefit from some of the cultural history that's integrated in the plants.
Do I understand correctly that doing something like this, you would incorporate native or indigenous plants? So
Yes.
wouldn't that help reduce the burden on maintenance because they're native plants, so they would take away from the great call for water, for
Right.
watering?
Yeah, I mean, the first genesis of this, I came from the East Coast, and we are in a semi-arid area, and our water is borrowed from as far as Colorado and Sierra Nevada and the Bay Delta, and we simply have to start working within our own water budget to be sustainable long-term. So changing about 50% of our potable water is used on outdoor landscapes. And we think around the world about the number of people impacted by lack of potable water. So we're really trying to model a new form of public landscape that saves water, has other values in terms of habitat. The beauty of our native habitat, and it's medicinal, like students disconnected from knowing that fabric is vegetal, pharmaceuticals, vegetal food actually grows somewhere. And the even spiritual purposes or uses of plants. So it's been really fun to reactivate that in the classroom and have, depends on the teacher and the subject, but having STEAM really be part of how we design the outdoor spaces.
I wanted to bring it back to Mr. Hammond's point in terms of the maintenance.
Right.
The tax on our maintenance. So having indigenous or native plants, does that reduce the burden on the maintenance?
It's I think Fernando would be good to comment on that. There's genuinely, there's no plant that is maintenance free. I'm trained as an architect, so a stone, but it's definitely something that needs care and needs to have a meaning to motivate people to care for it. But by planting native and using the mulch, the thick mulch cover, it is different than having to mow and blow. It's a different optic. What do you think, Fernando?
Well, several times through our walks, at the high school, that's something I brought up to the front end of our conversation. I made Claire and Joanna aware of the status where we're at in terms of the staffing that we have, the challenges that we are facing. And based on that, and Claire is a witness here, Claire, I want something that will reduce the amount of maintenance that we have. So this is where we're at. Tell me what you can provide while enhancing the aesthetics of our
And we met with your team member, and what we're really impressed by how few people are doing how much at the school districts, and it's sometimes overwhelming. So we try to do our best to make that job doable, but that's why we really have a conviction as a nonprofit to integrate students and service groups into the process. So people think, this landscape is part of me. This landscape is part of my experience. I don't want to throw a piece of trash. I don't want to stomp on it. I want to be part of it. So that's definitely part of our philosophy.
I'd be cautious about going into something looking for volunteer labor. Because while it's brand new and shiny, yeah, you probably get some. When it becomes old and boring, be very hard. And then whoever's sitting in these chairs is going to be saddled with a bill that we have to be cognizant of now while we're planning it. We can't look now. We have to look 10 years from now.
Well, the grants that you brought up, there is a window depending on the amount of the grant, say up to $500,000. The agency has to sign on to care for the amenities that are installed
Makes
for
sense. You're
the
using
time horizon.
taxpayers' money, they don't want it to go in the waste.
Exactly. So the maintenance protocol, what we do is we do the design, have it vetted and approved, and we encourage people's participation in the appropriate portions of the implementation. And then we help with what's called the establishment period for the vegetation. Because if a plant or a tree is going to fail, it'll fail in the first 9 months. And then it needs to be transitioned effectively to the facilities team. And they need to feel good about it, and they need to feel clear about the maintenance ongoing of that. And if we can continue to be present, more for the community values, that's good, but it has to be sustainable, and you all have to sign off on caring for that. If we put in an outdoor classroom bench or something, and you need to move it before, or if you sell the property, before the 10-year period or 20-year period, depending on the grant, there has to be, a schedule for, and that's never happened to us in 17 years, but that's, one has to be aware of that because of the stewardship of public funds.
Understood. No, that's the reason I asked that question, because I look at what our staff cares for now. I look at what we're proposing, that's not a proposal, what's being offered, and I don't know that we have the wherewithal to handle it. I don't know that we have that team in place today. We could, we don't, I don't know, we haven't seen that. But the issue becomes, if we don't, how does that increase our expenditures on the other side as we do have to take care of it? And I think looking for volunteer labor it's a lot easier said than done.
Well,
Well,
we as a
yeah.
district can't depend on volunteer
Volunteer
labor
labor.
for maintenance of it. We just can't do that. That's not in the
Yeah,
cards.
that's not, we're not proposing
No, I didn't-
long-term, yeah.
I didn't hear you that way.
Yeah.
I think maybe Rob did, but I
Okay.
heard you say,
When I
we're
heard
looking for volunteers to
To do
establish
students and
this.
service clubs, that's volunteer labor.
To establish it, to plant the plants, to put in the gravel, to establish this garden. Once it's established, a year later, it's gonna be the district's responsibility to maintain it. And for the most part, these sustainable type gardens, call it what you will, but that's what they are great from the water conservation standpoint. They can be done with great visuals. My real, the only thing that would drag me back on this, if we can get a decent upfront cost, is how we as a district are gonna keep the litter out of the front of this school. Because even if the students take ownership, a lot of the community is not gonna take ownership. And if you put something out there with paths and, what, the community is gonna participate in it.
Yeah.
And so, right now, we can mow the lawn and we can vacuum up the stuff and, a couple of hours, it's done. Once you plant all these sustainable plants, or water-saving plants, then litter reduction becomes much more difficult and much more time-consuming. So, if there's any way you can give us some idea what some of your earlier projects show for the increase in those costs,
Right, yeah.
that would be very helpful too.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, a couple of things, because French. Studied in France for a while, but the word to maintain is to hold the hand, the infinitive hand to hold. So it's very important that the long-term care is doable, and you don't want to put all this energy and then see a reduction in the impact of the landscape. So on one hand, City Manager Oliver Chi had called us in to review the city's compliance strategy for the Stormwater Act, and a lot of our nonprofit expertise, reviewing and helping them find ways that community can be served by complying. And I have a call in to him because I think the city needs to participate. Like the front of the high school, to me, it feels like a park to people in the neighborhood. They don't see it as a trespassing, the amount of people who are on that front during the weekend. And then Fernando's team has to deal with Monday morning, all the trash. So partly it's being collaborative and trying to get support from the city, because the city is benefiting from this as a park space for the community.
We found a way at them, because we are, because we've had some MOUs in place for them to participate in the cost of making that public space, and they have now stopped that and say they're not interested in financial cooperation in that. So
So-
you tell them that.
We'll work on
Not
it together. It's really, it's only fair because it's the same population that are being served. So that's one thing that we do, but,
Well, let me give you a different perspective.
okay,
I used to have a different hat on before I sat right here. I was the mayor for 13 years.
right,
It'll never fly.
okay.
You have two governmental agencies, two different budgets, two different everything. The city stops at that sidewalk. When that green starts, that's where the school starts.
Right,
And it's like California and Arizona. We get along really good, but you're not gonna use my money on your stuff, and I'm not gonna use my money on your stuff.
right,
It's the way we definitely work together. That's why, when I say volunteer, it all sounds great. Now you gotta make the work out of it.
Right.
It's easier said than done.
well, this is my
And-
17th year, so I'm with you on that.
I've been around this block a few
Yeah.
times. But the thing is, we're sitting here now, there's a TV camera running. And when someone says, it happens all the time, well, the city should insert whatever the city should do. Everybody goes, oh yeah, they should be out there for the schools. Well, the city is out there for the schools. We're out there, they are great with the schools. We have a very good working relationship. The city does not have an unlimited supply of money to do whatever it is that we need the city to do to be in concert with the
Right.
schools.
Right,
I need to say that, because if somebody were watching this at home, oh yeah, the city ought to contribute because it's like a park, somebody's gonna use it. Yes, they should. Well, the they is us. It's,
Right.
it's the four of us is the they here, David too. You're the they. We're the they that needs to take care of that and
Right.
do it.
that's why we're advocating for stewardship from a young age. And I think that the right-of-way perimeter along Colorado and the two perpendicular streets is the property of the city. And so if we could get support from them planting the trees on the edge and their support caring for those, I'm not talking about, a fantasy of extraordinary, support. In El Monte and the school districts in El Monte, the 3 districts, it's also been a case study, and how do you manage to collaborate effectively? We've had a lot of failures and a lot of challenges.
That was gonna be my question, in all your experience, have you been able to collaborate cities and districts, and has it worked out? I mean, can you provide an example in the area where that's worked out?
We haven't worked so much in Monrovia, like our Peck Water Conservation Park is the closest, but along the San Gabriel River with the El Monte City School District, the Durfee School, the Durfee-Thompson School on Star Street in Maxon, when we did the greening, similar to what we're proposing, the school tended to open that particular campus more for public health or fairs or public-facing events because of the, feeling, the sense of place that the school had, and the city, benefited from that. There's always contention about who's going to take the trash can, who generated that trash and how do you fairly divide the labor. Similarly, Rio Vista School in Almonte, we developed a park. It was a city park that we enhanced with exhibits about Native, Indigenous, Tongva Gabrielino and Barrio history, so that the school could walk, literally instead of getting on a bus, they could walk out the back of the field and discover the history of the river and the important role that agricultural farm workers have even today. So these are small examples. I could keep going, but it's never perfect. It's an ongoing challenge. But as you said, former mayor, you know, we're all, this is us.
School board member.
School board member. We are all in this, like we all have a role to play, whether it's not throwing something in the storm drain or, you know. So our experience has been, it's cyclical. It depends on the leadership. And there might be a champion, a principal who's tremendous, who has a, you know, a great sense of leadership, or the superintendent might be the leader, or it might be a science teacher. Like, there's got to be takers. There's got to be people who are excited about this. And then our commitment as nonprofit is to hold the hand, you know, to be there. And we've had situations where we lost 80% of the plants in a you know, an area that was supposed to be biodiverse. So we had to, you know, go back in and replant them. And we've had, the thing that I'm excited about in this instance is that Fernando is really familiar with the work that we've done. And I remember when we first met you, he said, please, trees are hard to maintain, be careful, you know, what you plant and how you care for it. And that's too much of a burden for me if you add too many trees. So, you know, one of the things we do is by the selection of the tree and the way we establish it, you know, prune it up and have low water use. But from the very beginning, we partner with the facilities team, and if they say, no go, you know, this is not going to be something we can deal with, a lot of the team members from municipal side, and I don't know if you found this, Monrovia is kind of exceptional in the cities that we work with. They're more proactive about this, but the mower and blower is the only tool in the toolbox. So if you have to weed or replant a native plant or mulch, that's outside of the culture of the municipal facilities folks. But at schools, there's a new culture. You know, there's a understanding from the beginning about how to take care of these landscapes. And mulch is free. You know, we get loads of mulch constantly. So the care regime is to put 6 inches of mulch in between the native plants and space them correctly so that you have, you know, area around them that you can control by the mulching.
Claire, I also wear another hat.
Ooh.
I'm a parent of school-age children here in Monrovia. And at one of their elementary schools, someone wanted to start a garden, and there was the, nope, that's not gonna work. It's not going to happen. We tried it before, it didn't work. And a few dedicated people stepped up and made an amazing garden. And they have been at another school where something similar has happened, and the teachers have gotten involved, and the community has gotten involved, and everyone has gotten involved to do exactly what you're talking about and bring this education and biodiversity and understanding for our plant heritage.
Mm.
And my kids, every time we drive by the corner of one of their old schools, they say there's chuparrosa, which means hummingbird, and they have named a tree.
Wow.
Because they have learned about it, and they have helped to trim it, and they have helped keep up the grounds, and the grounds, you know, 5 years running are kept up around chuparrosa. And it wasn't just my children that named this tree.
Mm-hmm.
It was a class.
Mm-hmm.
It was 90 children
Mm-hmm.
that named this tree, and they and all of and their parents, that is their tree.
Mm-hmm.
And they are going to maintain it, and they are going to love it, and they are always going to make sure that that area is taken care of. I know when they see tree trimmers in the area, they go, they're not gonna touch chuparrosa, are they? So, as you were saying, there's a new culture, and there's a new way of thinking, and I understand that things that have gone on in the past have gone on in the past and are absolutely real, and it has absolutely happened, but there are new ways of thinking, and there are new ways of doing things, and having them be positive and be beneficial, and it sounds like you have had some success stories.
Yeah.
And I think that there can be a cultural shift and a cultural understanding, and that we can bring this, and we can have different types of relationships with our community, with our city, and within our schools to bring something like this, which I believe is really, really necessary.
And I only have one caveat to what you said,
Mm-hmm.
and that is the historic significance of this structure
Mm-hmm.
is a huge part of Monrovia.
Yes.
So whatever trees go in there, I mean shrubs and low vegetation, okay, but whatever trees you put in there have to frame the building.
Mm-hmm.
They can't block, I mean, has to frame the building to show off the building.
Right.
So while I agree with all your goals, we just need to keep that in mind because this
Right.
is such a special building.
We agree with you. And when Fernando invited us to do the walk, it was staggering. I mean, it's a beautiful structure. And one of our recent projects was the LAUSC hospital. It's the 1930 building that was done by a collaborative in Art Deco. And we did the garden around the base, the new exercise trail with the same principles. And it was a Department of Interior, almost listed structure, and we had to follow all those rules. And we loved it because that's what we're excited about, connecting to history, having a cultural value. So the proposed vegetation is like leaving the green, there's the paths that go like that, and really nestling when the water comes off the roof and through the gutters, creating slight depressions to capture that water, make sure it infiltrates and doesn't create a vector issue, but has a beauty in and of itself, just resculpting that area, and then putting different heights of native and Mediterranean plants. But you'd still have, the full facade. And being trained as an architect, I agree that's a beautiful, beautiful facade.
And I just say that
Agency called
because our
mosquito and
first
vector
landscape
control.
architect did not understand.
Vectors are,
He was building a beautiful garden
Mhm.
in front of the building,
no, that's,
and he didn't
the
understand
vector is the
the
second
need
one
to
gets the
frame that
cheese.
building
That's the
instead of.
vector.
Right,
So I just wanna make sure as we move
Makes sense.
forward
Yeah.
with this, that
yeah.
we don't waste effort.
Yeah, there's so rarely a beautiful facade like that's a big part of the experience of being there, yeah.
The grants that you're speaking of,
Yes.
they're full dollar grants, there aren't any matching.
There
type
are
grants,
always matching requirements to be competitive, and the portion of the match that we bring is, we have a full fleet of trucks full of our shovels and our community science backpacks, and we have like a roving band of, so that can be counted as a match. The hour that a person donates, volunteers, builds their resume, participates with community, is counted as $29. So we build into our grant a proposal. If we know how many shrubs and how many trees and how much work we're doing, we estimate the value. And when people come to the events, they sign in and we capture that value as in kind. And we have to, really make good records of that to prove that we've achieved the match. And then we ask for the jurisdiction, for a match. If there's funding available for the care of this or for the development of this, whatever it is, we would fold that into the request as well.
What is your estimate for the grant ask?
Depending on how much hardscape, if there's like an actual little classroom nestled up on the right side as you're looking at it, or anywhere between 5 and 7. No, 500,000, I'm sorry, 500,000 to 700,000, right.
And do you have a fee that you take out of that? Is that you were talking about the price?
We would be your partner, like we would write the grant, you would give us permission as the jurisdictional agency, you would be fully apprised of the requirements of care, for the period of 10 years or 20 years, depending on the grant, and we would develop we would work with you, whoever stakeholders you want us to include, but facilities is an absolute foundational partner, and we would get the design approved. And we work with mostly recent college graduates, as I mentioned, as our team. I'm ultimately, and Joanne's ultimately responsible for any mistakes they make, but that's part of our process, is including them right out of school in a process. So We would design it, we would build it, we work with a constellation of engineers, civil, and landscape professionals in irrigation, or whatever the need is. And we've dealt with projects that are more complex and less complex. And then we would work with a combination of youth corps, the California Conservation Corps, or another local corps, and private contractors, because there's a hierarchy of, volunteer, community enthusiast can't do, hardscape you can do. So we want people to be successful and have a good experience. And then after we're complete, we would help with the establishment, as we've discussed.
I'm trying to find out how much.
Yeah, Celine, it's a little bit different for the typical grant writing. My understanding is, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no separate fee charge for help us get a grant, but it's a partnership. Once we receive grant, and then they will handle the project, the design, the finish the project. Yeah, we just work as a partner.
And to give you.
So we would enter into a memorandum of understanding before
Yes.
this kicks off?
Right.
Right,
And-
once we
and a no
award the
cost.
contract. Yeah.
On either side?
And
Who would carry the liability for the work that's being done?
Well, during the implementation, it's our liability.
Carry the insurance on it?
We have the panoply of insurance, all the insurance required for public work. Our insurance,
We just need to know what our
yeah,
exposure
yeah.
is, that's all.
But when we're successfully completed, if you accept the work, then it's we mutually indemnify each other. But we haven't, I don't know if there's wood around here.
Whenever we do any major projects, don't we have to have a special LACO approved on-site? Is that only for construction?
Are you talking about the
GSA?
DSA.
the Department of State Architecture?
Yeah.
It's only
Yeah.
for any structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
wouldn't need to get another.
You don't need a
The way,
DSA inspection.
yeah, the way none of these elements, there's no like shade sail or like bleacher, or it's all in the landscape area, so DSA would not review, but you would review,
Unless we put a classroom.
right,
Yeah.
right,
Some structure for a classroom.
right.
So my main concern, as I stated again, and to clear, has been, since I made clear, this is my level of maintenance that we have right here. These are the challenges. I don't want to exceed that threshold. On the contrary, my goal is to bring it down, that level of maintenance, while beautifying our sites.
So what's the next steps here?
So the
Well,
next
We
one-
would make a decision, those are, like I stated at the beginning, these are options that we are presenting, or I'm presenting to you. The other option, of course, is hydro seeding the existing, dead areas. And just leave it as is.
Are we
And so-
currently parking people there still?
No,
No.
anymore.
And in terms of
If-
the next step, there's an action item today about agreeing to allow Claire and Joanne to research and find grants for that area.
Does
And-
that action item include an authorization to enter a MOU with them?
we did not include these pieces. So,
So
once.
what does the action item authorize them to do? If to do something on our behalf without a memorandum of understanding?
So basically, the board authorized us to start work on the grant. So once we apply the grant, we award the grant, then we're starting a MOU with the organization. starting
And
to
we've
move forward the
we've done
project.
it both ways. Sometimes we've had the MOU before we started, because the grant that we've already researched for you, honestly, it's a considerable amount of investment on our part, but it's part of our apprenticeship, the students who are in our team. So we could have an MOU now, or we could have it once we're successful in getting a grant.
Do you need a board action tonight to be able to go forward?
Yes, because we need, in order to apply successfully for the grant, we need a letter from you stipulating that you're authorizing us to do that.
Whatever we say here tonight, I do not believe we're gonna approve a MOU tonight, and I don't think we will approve you submitting for us without an MOU. So my question is, what's the action item tonight?
The action item states that, and this is, I'm reading the action item.
Okay, I'm done.
The Board of Education is requested to authorize the district to apply for the Green Infrastructure Program Proposition 68 grant for the MHS Front Lawn Project.
That doesn't mention them
That doesn't,
at all.
that doesn't mention them at all.
And it does not give a dollar amount of, that we're seeking. I mean,
Just
because you have to keep in mind that there's the matching factor. So, you know, that's what concerns me is, you know, you could apply for all kinds of grants, but if we can only, if we have a certain ceiling of what we can come up with as far as matching,
Mhm.
you know, we have to be involved in that.
Have we ever done this before? Had a board action that said you can proceed with applying for a grant? I don't,
Typically, we would inform you about, here's the grant,
Right.
and usually those grants are things that we know that we can sustain, and they are educational in nature.
and then it would come to, for action to approve the grant or to
Mhm.
approve the
Mhm.
MOU or whatever. I'm trying to get in my head
You
what
know, one
it
of the
is
things-
the action does tonight.
One
Because
of
it
the
doesn't
things-
approve an MOU,
No.
and it doesn't, I mean, I don't really wanna approve a submittal until I know what the cost of what we're submitting for does.
I want to
You
know,
know?
I need to know a estimate on what it costs to maintain it.
I certainly think the board agrees with moving forward with this. If somebody doesn't, speak up, but I think we all agree with moving forward. It's more of a
It's the unknowns
procedural
right now.
question of what we're taking action on tonight.
And so two things, I think, one of the things we needed to know is, do we want to move forward in this capacity or
right.
hydro seed?
Right.
Okay, so we need clear direction from the board in that, in terms of the front lawn. Because the last time we looked at it, it was really prohibitive, cost prohibitive to even look at this. And then Fernando brought in Claire to, with some additional ideas. So if this is the direction we want to go in, I guess it would be, Claire, you could help us with providing some of that information.
Right.
because clearly the
If
board
I
has-
may, I'll tell you what I am comfortable with. First of all, I am comfortable with your work. I am very familiar with your finished product. It is user-friendly, it looks easy, particularly the Peck Road Water Conservation Part. I'm fine with that. I don't know that we want to create a new park in the front of our school. That's certainly not a direction that we have ever entertained. What we're trying to accomplish is really simple. We need to get something that is,
Aesthetically pleasing.
thank you for that word, I was looking for that. And then, but it is low cost or affordable cost to maintain and doesn't use a lot of water. I mean, it's pretty basic. My concern is that we're looking at Disneyland, okay, as an idea, and really what we're about is a little tiny water pool that you put in with your hose. It gets you wet, cools you off, and it performs a function, and you put it away in the summertime.
Right.
I think our visions are that far apart right now.
The one we presented to you.
This is beautiful. I don't know that we should get a $700,000 grant, even if we could. I don't know that's the right thing to do. That's a lot of money. And with $700,000 worth of stuff comes, I'll bet you $100,000 worth of maintenance on it. It has to. I would think that would be probably a good rule of thumb.
Do you
One-
agree with that?
Well, we could pull, it would be interesting to pull some data, like this is a project that, do you have the Jeff Seymour Center?
That's the folded one they should already have.
The Jeff Seymour Center, Family Center, that was a $750,000 or a $700,000 grant for a campus in El Monte, and it's got a lot of the features that we're talking about. And we could find out from them, you know, it's been in operation for 3 years now. We could get some hard numbers from them But the way we design this stuff, a lot of, and I know you felt uncomfortable as I do with the DAC designation, but a lot of our work in East County, Southeast, we haven't done as much work in Altadena and Monrovia, the upper foothills, is in tough neighborhoods where you have a lot of vandalism, a lot of impact. This is not the case here. So that's a tremendous advantage. But my point in saying that is our design has evolved within a tough context. When we put a boulder, it's hard to destroy a boulder. That's a feature in a landscape. When we do a depression, you know, as part of the aesthetics, the depression is not destroyable. You know, even if the plants do not survive, you know, replanting them is doable. So a lot of the prospect of success long-term, I have decided as a professional to do this for 17 years, you know, not do a whole lot of other things because I'm fascinated in what you're talking about. How do you sustain a public landscape that's meaningful and that's affordable, because we all need beauty. We all need these places. And so anyway, I don't have all the answers, but we sure are in it to adaptively manage and try to figure it out.
And you don't have to mow a rock.
Right, right, right. The gravel and the rocks and the bioswale, yeah, exactly.
Now, the high school currently has some large trees.
They're
and
beautiful,
picture trees.
yeah.
That would remain. Those
Absolutely.
trees would remain. That's not.
That's
part
our
of-
granddad or
Okay,
grandma.
okay.
Those are awesome legacy trees.
Okay.
Should we come back to this, maybe bring it back, get some more information, or what?
Well, we can get you some costs for maintenance. The grants are coming up. I don't mean to put time pressure on you, but we would like to be sure that this is something you're interested in, so that we can allocate our limited resources, you know, to trying to get a grant. And we can't guarantee that we will be successful. You know, we have tenacity. We'll keep writing until we find grants, like Peck Water Conservation work. We had to work for years before we got the first grant there. But if you're interested in this partnership, and you had asked about the funding, and just to be a little more transparent, in general, a grant, if it's let's say you had a $100,000 grant, you have to assume that about $20,000 of that is for the community outreach, stakeholder work, engineering, design, procurement, grant administration. There's a lot of schedules, like every single thing we purchase has to be put into a schedule, and the expenses are reimbursed to us after we have fronted them. So we are in effect a little bank. And when the analysts from the state review that, they may say, we reject this, you know, that can of paint was not part of your line item, so you've got to take it out. It's incredibly detailed.
Responsible for that, financially responsible.
We are responsible. If we get the grant, if you allow us to do the work on, say, the high school, we are the ones who manage the grant, and we have to provide those schedules. We have to front that money.
So
And
if they disregard that can of paint, who pays for that can of paint?
we do. I mean, that's our expertise and our responsibility.
Typically speaking, if there was $100,000,
Mm-hmm.
$80,000 is being here, and 20 goes to the people who administer it.
Okay.
'Cause,
But-
well, and it's
but
not-
the
it's not-
design,
It's not
I mean-
quite that is,
Yeah.
but it's similar to that. If you employ a grant writer, a grant writer receives a percentage of the proceeds if they award the grant. So there's money in the ability to write the grant. It is tedious beyond tedious to do a grant.
In our
But-
case, we break even if that. We raise additional funds because the state grants only pay 10% overhead, and our overhead is 1.3, or, you know, because we have all this insurance and, you know, we're training people. So this is not a profit business, it's
That's why you're a 501c3.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. So we, similarly with our labor, any hour or Joanne's hour that's spent, it's a schedule. We're allowed to bill direct labor plus workers' comp and, you know, vacation and, you know, the allowed benefits. And we put a schedule together with the hours that have been spent. Those are reviewed and reimbursed within the line items of, you know, design, project management. It's very codified, and it's a terrible business to be in.
So how soon can we have enough information for this board to determine what the cost, roughly, not exact, but roughly the cost of this project and our exposure?
If this is our request to be competitive, if we could get a match of $50,000 for a grant, of 500, and then we would do the match of the in-kinds that I mentioned, I think this would be a competitive proportion. And then we can get you information about what we know to be ongoing care costs for a similar size project.
So when would you have that kind of information so that we could actually take some action?
Well, the ongoing care costs would probably take us a couple weeks, but the other information, we've done a lot of work assessing and counting plants and looking at the grading required and the redirect of the storm water on site. And we've priced all that out. We have the budget for that, so.
So, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I need to interrupt you there, because you said you thought it might be as much as 700,000.
The difference is hardscape.
So you've costed all that out or not?
Yes, we had.
So this would be about a $700,000 grant.
It depends on how much you want to undertake, like vegetating along the edge of the building and doing minimal work on the front entrance would be the 500,000, and then doing more work around the perimeter and along the front would be the higher cost. And also how many benches and pieces of sort of nature discovery signage, that is the varying price.
When is your meeting with Oliver G?
I don't have it yet.
Oh, I thought you did.
I'm sorry, I just said I called because I think it's important that.
I'm with Rob, I don't think that's going on.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm of the opinion we don't even make that ask.
Okay.
because, I have a question, Connie.
Mm-hmm.
Are we under restrictions to go out and get multiple bids before we are able to award a contract?
We want to award a contract.
That's right, you're right. 'Cause we're
We're not, it'll be an MOU.
MOU, okay, you're right. Thank you. Answers my question. And there is money left over from the fire and the insurance?
That's correct.
Okay.
And we can use that for what?
Restoration of the front lawn.
For this
We
project.
can use that
Yes.
for this project.
That's right.
Yes.
How do
Or
we
matching
do-
funds.
We didn't get away with it.
I mean-
We built it into
Yeah, we
the
just haven't
recovery
used
of
it
what
yet.
got destroyed during the fire.
We built the front
Yeah.
lawn.
They had all the
So-
trailers and everything sitting
We just
there.
haven't used
We
it.
gotta wrap this up, folks. I mean, if you have another question about this, but when do you need what authority from this board? I mean, if we took an action tonight, would you take that to mean that you could
We-
prepare a $700,000 grant and an MOU and bring it
Yeah.
back to the board for approval?
The deadline for this grant is this. end
Yeah,
of
we
this month,
need
right?
to know as soon as possible, tonight would be great, that you want us to finish the work on a proposal and with your instructions on what the match is and with our, basically the maintenance costs that you're asking for. We'll try to get those as soon as possible. I don't have those tonight. But you also, if we wrote a grant and we submitted it and the agency reviewed it, it usually goes through a process. You don't get it right away. So there's an option, at any time to say, thank you, we don't want to keep going with it, or yes, that sounds good. So it's not like if you write a grant, you're in a contract, if that makes
What
sense.
is the hard deadline
Yeah,
for
so
this?
Kara, the board needed more information, so if I understand it correctly, you said deadline's the end of this month, right?
Yeah, we have to know, we have
So
a busy
the other
schedule. We have to
option
know whether
that
you want us to do it or
we
not.
can- Once we have all the information, we can come back for board approval on 26th.
We won't have time to do a grant in 4 days.
I think.
No, it's a process application, the MOU, the board want to take a look at it, the other
Right.
parts, those kind of information.
Right.
I'm sorry, what's causing that hard deadline?
Well, the grant submittal date is, do you have the exact date? It's, I think it's the end of the month.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is a lot of work.
You can't
So,
postpone this until-
yeah, we have to know, not tonight, but we need to know very, very
How much money do you
soon.
want this board to obligate tonight, or commit to this project? I haven't heard that.
No, I was not thinking about a request board to commit that, because the original plan is,
But
the board.
if we have these people undertake some work,
Mhm.
and we decide we don't wanna go forward with it, are they just out their time?
And do we have an obligation, like, I'm not aware.
No,
of
it's
any
a
obligation.
partnership. It's your interest in our nonprofit and our work as partners. Like, if we don't get this grant, we'll keep looking for another grant. We're not
Okay.
charging a grant fee, but to be honest, it's a considerable investment. We pay everybody on staff. We have 12 people, recent college graduates, they get a stipend every week. So we don't want to move forward if this is not something you're genuinely, excited about.
So I think we just need to find out what money we can
We can know,
invest in this, right?
I think what we need to know is what's it gonna cost us to take care of it once we get it in the ground. The amount of money that we have to start this process, we currently have sitting in the bank. The amount of money that you would secure from a grant is fantastic because it doesn't cost us any money. Our meter starts to run the minute you're finished.
Right,
And we need to have a good idea of what that costs, because we know what we're spending now.
right.
And
Could you share that possibly?
well, he knows it, I don't
Yeah.
know it.
Yeah,
Why don't
Connie
So-
knows it.
Could we have
If
a
the
s-
board generally agrees that this is the direction that we wanna take, can you get started and bring those numbers back to us on the 26th? And at that time, then we can take action to say, we'll put
Can you-
this
can-
money aside for that.
Yeah. Can
No, I
we-
didn't say write the grant in 4 days. I said, start that process now and get approval of the funding and MOU on the 26th. Is that something that we can do? You can't wait until the 26th to start.
yeah,
writing
no,
the
we're
grant.
already, we'd have to be well into it. But you can tell us, whenever you can, what your match is. There's staff match, support developing the project. You have to keep close track of it, but that's a match, for the grant. If you have a cash match that is available for developing the landscape in front of the building, the grant will be more competitive with a match. It's less competitive, but we can still submit it with whatever match you feel comfortable with, and we can work on getting the long-term care projected costs.
We can also try and schedule a special board meeting and come back to this.
Yes.
Try and get this information and bring this back.
All right. Sounds like the
Wait,
way
wait,
we
wait,
need to
before I say,
go.
let's find out where everybody is next Wednesday.
Next Thursday would be my.
I'm sorry,
Date
I
from
personally
tomorrow?
am not available. I can share the information, but I'm not
Busy.
available Thursday.
I can tell you now.
All right.
Well, you might wanna have a meeting without
Depends
me
on
anyway.
the time.
No.
It's usually a nicer meeting.
Stop.
Oh, you're always very nice. Well,
It's already too late. A week from today?
So can you handle that? 'Cause I
What
can't be
time?
here. Got my daughter's Angel City
o'clock?
games.
Could I be on the phone for that?
That's up to you. We've done that before.
What's my first priority?
I'm not available.
Are you available at all then?
No, I'm out on the 17th, from the evening of the 17th until Friday.
You can't be on the phone?
Could we discuss this during the action item to see what our next steps need to be and then connect with them?
Sure.
Well,
I hate to leave it hanging, but
I'm also looking at our time.
I know. we've
And so if we
gotta
talk
get out
about
of
this during
thing.
the action item,
Get into closed session.
yeah, so
Yeah.
we're gonna do that, and then we'll
Great.
connect later.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Nice
you.
to have met you all. Thank you so much.
Look forward to working with you. I think we'll work out. It's just procedure.
We'll do that,
We
we'll do
just
the
have to make
budget
sure
during
how
the,
much-
take it.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. That's good.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
and we can do the budget during the budget study session.
Yeah.
Not
Oh,
the study
good.
session, but
So
during the
glad.
budget item,
Oh.
during the actual meeting.
Yep.
So,